Okay. So now I want to talk you out of becoming a lead, basically, a little bit. So
compete with you, right?
Like what?
So they don't compete with your position.
No, I just want to make sure people know what they are getting themselves into. That is the thing. So just real quick, I've been around for like 20-ish years. Started as a programmer, in fact. So have a very logical kind of structured mind. But then quickly switched to game design, and this is where I spent like most part of my career. But I also became interested in this whole like game development process kind of thing, mostly because of the reason that it tended to get in the way of doing good design. When people were like, okay, you have to be creative now, and you have to figure out the core game loop of this game in like 2 months. Like, okay, that doesn't really work that well. So nowadays, I'm like kind of this hybrid between producer and game designer. And now I've also joined Rovio in that capacity as a design director to make sure, not to take like decisions on the game itself, but to really make sure that our design team basically has like all the process, all the environment, and all the resources to like really do a great job, pretty much. So when I say you don't want to be a lead, what I'm referring to is like this traditional progression, career progression in a way, where people go like, okay, from junior, intermediate, senior, and then they become like lead. This is kind of like, okay, this is just how you progress your career in a way. And I think the problem with this is that this assumption is like just fundamentally flawed. Because leading people and subject matter expertise are like two completely different things. It's like just because you're like a super kick-ass programmer doesn't mean at all that you're also good at leading people. So it's like, it is like two completely different skill sets in a way. And when I say lead, I always describe it in a way, okay, leading means drama. Leading is drama, because that is what you have to do as a lead. You have to be there's the two secrets of good leadership. It's like listen and give a damn. No? So it's like, you have to listen to your team member, you have to like go in, you have to have all these discussions, you have to dig for all the conflicts, and then you have to also follow up on these conflicts and fix them in a sustainable manner. And that means you also have to have like all these uncomfortable discussions with people where you talk about like, okay, unwanted behavior, or when they ask, okay, you're not ready yet for senior because these and that reasons. Like all these discussions you need to have, and you need to be good at those. You need to be able to handle those with grace. And if that is not your thing, then you shouldn't be a lead. That's basically my point here. And I think a big problem comes actually from this progression that like traditional people have in their mind. And I think it's also the responsibility of companies and the stakeholders to provide like an alternative career path for people who don't want to deal with people, basically. So this is something that we discussed a lot at Remedy, for example, also Rovio, is that there should be like two different distinct paths. One should focus on the lead side of things, where you actually like deal with people and focus on managing a team and leading a team. And there should be like an equally valid path that is like on a principle, on a subject matter expertise role, because what people actually want to do is to be the ones who take like the important decisions. Like if you're a principal programmer, you want to decide what engine to use, or like how to structure the code architecture, like the big important decisions. Or designer, like what kind of key features do we need? These are the decisions that people actually want to take. And they only go to like the lead position because that is the only valid way to progress their careers. So this is like really the responsibility of the companies to like offer a separate but equally valid career path. Because then, so let's say if leading is drama hasn't like yet convinced you to like not go for lead, the immediate next question. So let's say, okay, I still want to be a lead. I can handle the drama, right? I can do it. Then the immediate next question I get is, okay, so what do you expect me to do? Like, how do I become a senior? How do I become a lead? Like, what should I do? And here is always unclear what is expected of leaders, and I've been in lots of companies and seen lots of stakeholders, and this is always when like the squirming begins. It's like, okay, we have a RACI chart here, and we know it when we see it. It's like, okay, So I figured, not good enough. Like, okay, I want to make it very simple, that just have like a behavioral diagram, for example, and be like super specific on what I expect from a leader. So now I made a diagram, so we can actually go through what I specifically expect from a leader. And it basically starts like this. So you have like project leadership. This is like the game director, tech director, art director, like all the people. And they are responsible for defining, okay, what is the game that we're making, the vision, and what are like our constraints and our like high-level requirements. Like should it on Unreal or Unity or whatever. And then this is like already the first step. My first expectation from a leader is to understand the vision and the plan and the requirements and everything, and then also agree with, like, okay, this is a good idea. This is something that makes sense. This is a good plan. So first of all, very important point for any kind of leader, you have to believe in the plan as well. You also have to think that what we are trying to do is a good idea. Because this is also the first thing that you should do as a leader. You should, if it's not clear, if it's unclear, like the vision or the requirements or anything, you actually have to push back to your like project leadership. You have to demand that they explain it to you until you get it, until you understand. That is very important. Like you really have to be clear. You have to have a good picture of what we are trying to do and what are the requirements and everything. Because if you then still fundamentally disagree with like what we are trying to do, then you shouldn't lead in this team. Then you should do something else in another project or another feature or wherever. But say, okay, you do understand, and you think, okay, this also makes sense, is a good idea, because the thing that happens next is that you go to your team, and then you explain the intent, which is vision and all the requirements, to the people. And then if like one person in your team like asks, okay, why are we doing this? Saying, the hell I know, is not acceptable. It's not a good thing. So you actually should be able to explain the intent and also say, okay, this is why this is a good idea, explaining like all the rationale behind it. And then you can say, okay, so this is the thing we want to achieve. Say, we want to achieve, we want to have like combat that gives the player enough time to think. And then you can think, okay, so in order to do that, we should probably work out a tactical moderate combat pacing. And I have like a first draft of a plan, and then you can go to your team and say, okay, this is what we want to achieve. This is my idea, like our goals, what we could do. And then you can like ask the people, and you can already leverage like the smart people in your team to iterate on the plan. And then comes the next step. This is then probably the most important part of, and the biggest part of it all, because then you have a plan, and then you start executing that plan. And here is like, this is the biggest part of being a leader. Because the main thing as a leader is you have to find a way to make it work. That is your main task as a leader of a team. Find a way to make it work. So you iterate, you prioritize, you execute, and then you do all these things, whatever is necessary. So you listen to your team, you observe, you spot, you're trying to figure out problems, you give feedback, you remove blockers, clarify anything that is unclear, you cut unnecessary stuff. Like you're proactive, you're always observing and checking, okay, what can I do? Find a way to make it work. And that is like the main idea of what I expect from a leader. But then there's like two more things that are very important, and they always are the first things that fall off a to-do list when you're like super busy, and that is communicating what is going on. Because the thing is, this is a black box for your stakeholders. They have no idea what the hell is going on here. And if you don't communicate upwards and tell them like what is going on, they become nervous. Then they start like asking questions and like poking their nose in things. It's like, and then they start disrupting everything. So in order to actually build trust with your stakeholders and keep them calm, like you have to communicate like maybe every week, like on a high level, what is going on? Hey, we're working on this. Next week, we're going to attack this. Like don't ask them what you do, tell them. Next week, this and this is going to happen. So then they can say, if they see you running in the wrong direction, they have a chance to like stop you, for example. So, but this way, in the best situation, you tell them what's up, and then they develop like more and more trust. Yeah, these people, they know what they're doing, so that's cool. But then, of course, sometimes you can run into problems that you can't solve yourself, and then you actually have to escalate. And this is also something that is not generally talked about that much. Like, what are your escalation channels in a team? Like who do I go to if I hit a brick wall, for example? I mean, usually it's like the one step higher in the hierarchy, and if that doesn't work, you go like one step higher, and so on and so forth. But it's very important that you then also do, because then the stakeholders can actually help you. And that's the whole magic. This is what I expect from a leader. And the funny thing is always like, it's not that complicated, like when you think about it, but doing it is always the problem. Like spotting problems early, listening and giving feedback, and noticing that the people are not giving feedback enough, for example. Like all these things, the doing is always the problem. Okay, so if you're still on board, still want to be a lead, then I think another thing that is important to understand is also that there is like different style, a different way of doing things. No? And there's like different leadership styles. And if you Google leadership styles, there's like lists with 10, 11, 15 different kind of leadership styles. From like authoritarian style, or like laissez-faire, or like transactional leadership. There's like so many different leadership styles. But what I found is that you kind of sort of can group all of them into like basically two main categories. And it's also a good way of like figuring out when you're working at a company in a team, when you ask like one of the main stakeholders like this question, like to kind of figure out what kind of style do you have in this company. So if you ask like, do you think the lead animator should be the best subject matter of the team? And if the answer is yes, of course, like the best subject matter expert should also be the one leading the team, then most likely you have this kind of leadership style. So it's like this pace setting. And it's also the style that companies tend to gravitate to if you don't talk a lot about this topic in the first place. So the notion, like the idea basically is that the leaders go in, solve the biggest problems themselves. They tackle the hardest problems. They set the quality bars and the pace, also hence the name. And the rest of the team is basically expected to kind of like watch and learn, pretty much. No? The good thing about this style is that it gives you immediate velocity. It's like if you work like this, you will get results pretty quickly. Stuff gets done. This is really good about this kind of leadership style. But say, if your answer to the question about the lead animator is no, then most likely you have this kind of leadership style. And that is pretty much like the opposite of pace setting, is where the leaders intentionally go not in and solve the problems themselves, but work through their team members instead. And here, this way, people learn a lot faster. And this style focuses a lot more on like chemistry in the team. And ultimately, like if you have a team that works in this style, you have like a higher velocity than whatever pace setting can ever achieve. So this style, in the end at least, gives you a higher velocity than pace setting. There's of course problems, because with this coaching leadership style, like the main problem with this is that it takes time. It takes time. It's an investment. So, and here I'm talking like months and years of time that it can take to get a really, really high velocity, a really tight-knit team. And I've also seen, like, because you can overdo everything. And if you overdo coaching, there can be like an overemphasis on learning. It's when like the team like forgets that they also have to deliver stuff. It's like, okay, so, yeah, so you can overdo everything. But the downside of the pace setting is that it's really hard to scale. It's like, and people learn like a much slower than with the coaching style. But then I think it really depends on the situation that you're in. No? Because there's like pros and cons to both approaches, as always. But if you have like a delivery, like next month, that ensures a milestone payment, and that is required to keep the company alive, it's maybe not the best context to think about like, how can we coach our team in a leadership style? Then I think you should actually focus on delivery. But if you are in a position where you have a bit more breathing room, let's say, a longer runway, I think, I would definitely recommend looking at the coaching style and investing in your team, because that way you have like higher loyalty and in the team less turnover and ultimately also higher velocity in the end, and you get more money, more value for your money, pretty much. And I think it's also important when you work at a company to understand what kind of mindset do we have, because companies usually don't talk about that topic that much. So a good way is to ask this question, like, do you think the lead animator should be like the best lead animator in the team, best subject matter experts? Because different behaviors are rewarded differently, right? And if you behave like you are in a coaching environment, but you exert like pace-setting behavior, you're not gonna get rewarded. Like maybe you even get scolded, and vice versa. So in a pace-setting environment, everything that matters is be precise, fast, deliver. That is like the thing that matters most. If you behave like that, then you will get rewarded. It's all about winning individually, and if everyone in that team wins, we win. That is like the notion of this pace setting. And in contrast, the coaching is much more about like, it's all about winning together. And it's the notion of if one of us fails, the whole team fails. So we have to support each other. It's much more about communicating openly, like transparency and like also introspection, self-reflection and stuff. And it's important, that's what I'm saying, it's like important what kind of mindset is prevalent in your workplace. So that you know how to behave in order to like be successful. So this is like from a perspective of like a leader in a team. So now I wanted to change perspective a little bit and say, look at it from a business perspective. Say now you're the boss. Now you've been promoted. Now maybe you founded your own company and stuff. Okay. Now you have to look at team a little bit different. And I think what is the first thing that is very important is that you should think about team. The team is the entity that is important for your business. It's not the individual contributors that is relevant. It's like it's the team, this entity above the people that makes the games. And that is the thing that is valuable to your company. You know? Because, of course, in the best case, you could do everything alone. You don't need people. So that's always the best. Because then you don't have to deal with all that drama and stuff. But as soon as you have like a bigger endeavor, you need help. Then you need to hire people, and then, okay, if you have like 2, 3, 4 people, you already have a group. And then a group is not a team. A group is just like people working on the same thing. And as soon as they start talking to each other, it gets complicated. Because then you have to like explain what you want, and then people go, what? And I don't understand, and this doesn't make sense, and everything becomes like complicated as soon as you have to deal with people. But what I think is important to understand is like the different way of how people can be organized. And one way is like it's group versus team. And groups are organized like this. No? It's like you have a central person, and then they communicate through this person, and they organize everything. And a team is organized, is more like self-organized, self-coordinating through a common goal. And when you have a team, this is why it's also so important to always talk about vision and intent. Because if that is unclear, then the team goes like in all different directions. And that's like probably even worse than a group organization. The thing is, groups do have their uses. There's like situations that are, for example, that are isolated, that are very predictable, repetitive scenarios, like big asset production lines, for example. Like we need 50 concept arts, 50 house assets or so. And I think quantitative QA is also something, not qualitative, that is different, but like just stress testing, or like, I don't know, testing on different devices and things like that, or localization, things like that. The problem also only is that this is unsuited for most parts of the game development, like everything else pretty much. Like prototyping, feature development, UX design, like all of that is ambiguous, is complex, and it's unclear, unpredictable. So teams are much better for that. No? Groups are easy to set up, and it's kind of like the most common way of how people work together, but as I said, it's like it's unsuited for most parts of game development. What you want is like a well-functioning, efficient teams with high velocity and little waste. And what ways is, we will get to that in a few minutes. So why do you want a great team? Because first, before you can build a great game, you have to build a great team. And a great team, like hallmarks of a great team, is when they really know each other well, when they've worked with each other for a long time, they have bonded, they know each other's quirks. Like if you have a team that has its own sense of identity and purpose. And if you have a team that even has like their own inside jokes and humor, then you are at a really, really good place. This is like what an efficient team looks like. And the thing is, I mean, again, it's kind of similar with the expectations of the behavior of a lead. It's kind of simple when you think about it, of course, but it's the doing that is the problem. Because teams are an investment. No? Teams, it takes time to build good teams. And I think it starts really with trust and working climate. No? If you have a team that hates each other, that has like a really bad working climate, it doesn't really matter what kind of work process you put on top of it or what kind of like vision you have. It just will not work. Like if people hate each other, they will find a way to sabotage anything. It's no problem. Like people are really good at that. So it's like when you say culture eats strategy for breakfast, this is what it means. Like you have to have like a good trust, good working climate in the team, and a good culture. That is like the foundation of everything. No? And why is that? Because the most important skill that the team has, or one of the most important skills, is to resolve creative conflicts in a sustainable manner. First of all, you want to have creative conflicts, because otherwise you're a cult. And then you end up in like very strange places. So you want to have creative conflicts. No? It's kind of like the 6 and 9 situation in a way. Because what people need to understand is that creative conflicts are a means to like see every angle of a certain situation or a problem or whatever. And what people tend to do is like they often confuse like the relationship they have with each other with the issue they are trying to fix. Or in other words, if I say like your feature isn't working, it's not an attack. It's like we are here on the same side. We are trying to fix that problem over there. Like we are in the same team. And that is very important to understand. Because like it's like even if you think that you're the most logical person on the planet and everyone else is kind of like not as smart, it's like no. Other people are smart too. And they know stuff that you don't. And when someone has like a different opinion, you should not become defensive. You should actually become curious. No? It's again like, if someone disagrees with you, you should become curious. So if someone says, no, that's not a 6, that's a 9. It's like, okay, why do you say that? Like, okay, let me understand your point of view. Because the thing is, one of these guys, no, where is it going? It's not working. I'm missing a slide here. Because one of these guys is actually wrong. Because someone put this 6 here on the ground, so these people should actually like back up and orient themselves and find or ask someone. And like resolving creative conflicts is a way of doing that. And the thing is, this only works if you have a team that has a good climate and has trust with each other. It's like, first, you have to create an environment of psychological safety. And if that is not the case, people can't resolve these conflicts because then they take everything personally and then the fighting just starts. So, and this is just the basics, what I'm talking about. So first you have to build a great team before you even can build a great game. And I think what is important, what constitutes a great team? So how do you get there? And I think, in my opinion, like a great team has like these 3 things. It's like subject matter expertise, purpose, chemistry. And subject matter expertise, I have a video, I hope it works, from Steve Martin. And he was asked, like, how do you be successful in show business? And he had like a great response. So let's see if that works. No? We need sound.
And you said...
Okay, wait, let me start it again. So.
Someone stood up in an audience somewhere and said to you, how do you be successful? And you said you have to be undeniably good at something.
Well, it really is this. When people ask me, say, how do you make it in show business or whatever? And what I always tell them, I've said it many years, and nobody ever takes note of it because it's not the answer they wanted to hear. What they want to hear is, here's how you get an agent, here's how you write a script, here's how you do this, But I always say, be so good they can't ignore you. And I just think that if somebody's thinking, how can I be really good? People are going to come to you. It's much easier than doing it that way than going to cocktail parties.
Yes.
But this is basically the tip that I can also give you. You need people who know their craft. This is like, of course you need people who know their craft. And you should really think about, okay, how can I be like really good at what I do? And it's also when you give feedback in peer reviews, for example, like I always say to people, like, don't give feedback on stuff that this person is not good at. Give feedback on stuff that this person is good at. And ask, like, how can they be even better at what they're already good at? Because that is like what they're paid for. That's why they're here. You're not paid to be here to be like average at a lot of things. You're here because you're like really good at some things, like a few things. And that's kind of like what you should think. So stay humble, learn your craft, have patience, and also, very important, be useful to your current project. I really like this quote from Matthias Lilia from Paradox when I worked like some 7 years ago, because he also said, like, you are here to solve your boss's problems. You're not here to make new problems. You're here to solve problems, and that's the purpose of like why we pay you. I think, so that's very important. Then I think the next tip, the thing that is also super important for a good team, is purpose. And there's like a cool video from Daniel Pink. I'm not going to play that because that's like too long. But this is based on self-determination theory, and I absolutely recommend everyone to watch that and understand like how people are motivated, like autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So that's really good. Because paying people is good, but money is, in terms of purpose, it's never an end goal. So first of all, like, it's never money that is the goal. It's always the thing that you do with the money that is the goal. That is like what you're trying to achieve. But like, imagine you want to inspire your team, and then you go like, we want to make more money. It's like probably the most lame and uninspiring way to try to motivate your team. And I'm also very much looking at like a lot of mobile companies, because they are very, very data-driven, and then they go like, yes, we need to increase day 7 retention. It's like, yay, that's awesome. So, great. And by contrast, and here I'm also looking at Paradox Interactive, again, that I worked, said like 6-7 years ago. Things might have changed, so I don't know what they're doing nowadays. But back then, Paradox had like the best purpose I've ever seen in any company I've ever worked at. And what they said is like, okay, we want to make the world a nerdier place. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. This is why I get out of bed every morning. This is why I work at this company. And this is what gets people up in the morning. You want to have like a purpose of what they're doing that people think, okay, this is worth my time. This is worth my lifetime. And if you have a good answer, or like when you have a project or something that people are working on, you better have a good answer for this. Because why are we doing this? And what is the whole purpose of this team, this game, and this whole company? Like, why are we doing this? And if you have an inspiring answer, then you get people moving. Then people do this extra step. And this is also, for example, the reason why a lot of games that are really badly mismanaged and has like lots of problems still get shipped. Because the people believe that this game is worth making, like regardless of all the problem and all the challenges that they have to walk through. And purpose makes people surprisingly resilient against a lot of problems. So if you have a good purpose, you also most certainly have a very resilient team. And the third point is chemistry. So I've talked a little bit about that already, but I think just to make this point extra clear, what is important, also from like a stakeholder perspective, basically. Because in every team you have like behavioral dynamics. And Ed Catmull, who wrote Creativity Inc., has a great story that illustrates what I mean here. And he's telling the story of like a vacation that he took with like he and his wife, and they had like friends, also another couple. So the four of them, they were renting like a big camper, and then they drove to like a camping trip. But they chose a route that led through a lot of roundabouts, like very small roundabouts. And these roundabouts were like super difficult to like navigate with like the big camper. And then his friend was driving, and the wife of his friend started like complaining about her husband's driving style. So she began like nagging and like, oh my god, and like your driving is really really bad. Or I don't know. And then like they drove through, and at some point they actually like blew a tire out. So there was like a big bang, like, poof. And then the funny thing that Ed then noticed was that like his friend and his wife, they kept nagging. They kept like fighting each other. He kept driving. She was like, no, you blew a tire out. No, I did not. Like, if you would just stop nagging, I could just drive in peace. So they kept driving with a blown out tire. And what Ed Catmull then said is like, what he realized is, okay, so there are dynamics that can even prevent people from doing what is necessary. Like what they should have done, of course, is to stop the car and get out and like check out the tire, like assess the damage. But they didn't. They just kept driving and kept nagging. So if you imagine, this is only 2 people. Now imagine you have a team, 15 people, 40 people. There are behavioral dynamics in every team that just will develop. Like if you pay attention to it or not, you have these dynamics and they will develop. And as a stakeholder, you kind of want to be in control of the direction of where these dynamics develop too. Because if you don't, it's random what you get. And when has luck ever been a good business strategy? So, and this is again what I said, this is just, all of this is just the basics. This is just like the basics to get your team in place. No? So you want to have like subject matter expertise, purpose, chemistry, all of that. And if you have that in order, and then you work a while with this team, then you can get a team like this. Then you can have like a world record team already. And this is like from I don't watch Formula 1, but I know that like a pit stop in under 2 seconds is fucking fantastic. So this is a team that you want. And if you have a team like this, then I think it makes sense to actually look at the advanced stuff. Then I think it makes sense to look at like, okay, how can we share knowledge with other teams, with other studios, other projects? We can look at design methodologies like rational game design from Ubisoft or MDA or whatever. Or you can even look at like situational leadership, which is like dynamically switching between pace setting and coaching, depending on the situation, is in theory the best way, but is very, very hard to pull off. But this is what I mean. Like get your basics in order first, and don't skip these steps. And this already will take months and years. And then, only then, does it make actually sense. Because only teams like that can profit from all of this advanced stuff. So just again, from a stakeholder perspective, you actually want to have a team with like a good working climate and trust. Not only because it's morally the right thing to do, but also because it's just bad business if you don't. And I think it's also interesting to look at what a bad team can look like, and that with a caveat, because I also firmly believe that there are no bad teams. There's only like bad leadership. Let's say in like 95% of the cases, it's not the individual contributors in the team that are the problem. It's like inexperienced leadership that causes a team to not perform as you want. But okay, so let's say, because bad teams, let's say for the sake of argument, the bad teams produce waste. And waste is something that I took from like the Toyota production system, for example, and then I applied that to the games industry. So, and there's like different points of how you can waste time and money and effort from a team. And there's like lots of great things. So overproduction is like this notion when you have a team that can't figure out the core loop and goes like, okay, we just need one more feature, and then the game's gonna be great. This is a fantastic way to waste like time and money. Waiting is another great way to waste money. It's like when you have like dependencies, you have like these bottlenecks. If there's like only one person in your company that can transfer the data from your mocap into your rigging system, and the whole company is like depending on that one guy, for example. So it's also a great way to waste time and money. Marginal drains is something that I also really like. It's like these small inefficiencies that just add up over time. It's when you move like assets and data around that isn't needed, for example, or if it's needed, it's not automated. So for example, I don't know, you have like a balancing sheet and there's like lots of values and you always have to put them by hand into the game, for example. If that process is not automated, great way to waste time and money. Over-engineering, of course, the classic, like how do you touch your right ear? And you can not only over-engineer, you can also over-design, I think. And that is, for example, something that I see a lot in like junior designers, because it's very easy to make like grand designs and very big designs. That's actually like super easy. And the more experienced the designer becomes, the smaller, the more elegant these designs actually become over time. So if you have like a really small and elegant design, that's probably a design that the senior did. And of course, at some point, you also get like diminishing returns if you over-engineer stuff. And then you have defects, which is kind of like the opposite of like over-engineering. Is when you work so sloppy that like a simple bug fix becomes like a 2-day endeavor for the whole team. So I think like great teams find like the right balance between like over-engineering and defects, so that you can be a bit more efficient. Excess inventory is also some great way to waste time and money. And this is like when you bring in new people and you tell them, well, the documentation is like 2 years old. Don't look at this. Oh, that part of the code, yeah, we're not using that anymore. It's like, yeah, okay, great way to waste time and money. Or underutilized talent is also something. And I think the anecdote here, at Remedy, for example, we had an AI designer who was really good at like making like these behaviors of the NPCs and stuff. But then we did like a skill overview of the design team, and we actually asked the question, like, okay, what do you consider yourself? Like, what kind of designer do you actually want to be? And then came out that this guy didn't even want to be an AI designer. So he was actually much more interested in like procedural generation and like level generation, like that kind of side of the design thing. And if he wouldn't have spotted that, he would have become like, at some point, frustrated. And like, okay, I also only have like to do this AI design all the time, and then he would disengage. And it's also a great way to waste time and money. And this one is my favorite, actually. It's like when the process becomes the goal, suddenly. It's like when you have like inexperienced production in your team, and then they have like, okay, we have this process now, and this will solve all our problems. And then they don't realize, okay, different team sizes require a different amount of overhead. So if you're like 6 people, you don't need any process. You can just wing everything. You just talk to each other. If you're like 15 people, you need a little bit of overhead. Not much, like just enough so people know what's going on, who is working on what. That's already enough. You don't need estimations and stuff even. But if you're working with like a 400 people team, then of course you need like all the processes. You need, of course, everything has to be like organized. Otherwise it's just chaos. But this is like, I've seen this a lot, like, okay, we have to estimate everything. Everything has to be a Jira. Everything has to, like, all the rituals. And like, okay. So this is a great way to waste time. And I think it's easy to spot bad teams and really bad contributors, but it's really hard to like these mediocre teams. It's like, okay, and I read a book that's called like How the Mighty Fall, great book, had a great definition of mediocrity. And they said mediocrity is like chronic inconsistency. It's like if it's like, it's good, it's not so good. Good. It's like when you have a team like that, so they kind of deliver, but it's like very inefficient, very wasteful. And I think that is something, if you have a situation like this should give you pause and think about very carefully about your next step, because you don't want to like destroy everything, of course, but it's also not a situation that you should accept for a long time. And so I'm soon done. So I think what is important to understand is also, again, coming back to the entity of the team. And this is especially for stakeholders, really, really important thing that you should understand. This is important. Because the entity is not the individual people. It's the thing that combines, that like the whole dynamic of these people. That is the thing. And this is the thing that actually makes the games. If you switch out too many people, you just destroy this entity. If you have like a new team composition, you have to start over. Then it's a new team, and you have to begin again. And this is also the reason why, for example, studios like studios that become known for a certain thing, like, I don't know, BioWare storytelling, it's like if they destroy their teams or make new team compositions, and then they don't pay attention to this, it's not the company that makes this game. It's like their teams that do. But if they destroy their entities, their teams, then it's bad. It's like really problematic. And I think this work never stops. And this is like my maybe most quote that I would like to emphasize the most, because I've talked to people, and some of them told me like, yeah, all of this what you're telling me is all bullshit. It's like, yeah. So also very fancy talks. Like, okay, sure, but you cannot not have culture in your team. And the culture you get is always the worst behavior you let people get away with. This is the culture you get in your team, whether you're thinking about it or not. So, very important. And this work never stops. Like, teams should become hungry. They should always think like, okay, we can improve, we can become even better, and always stay vigilant. And I think this would be my summary of everything. You want to have like well-functioning teams with a good working climate and trust, because that just is effective business. And it directly translates into saved money and more opportunities. And the major tools you have is like create an environment of psychological safety, give the team a worthy purpose, that people feel this is worth their time, and then treat people well, and also pay them enough so they don't have to think about money, but they can think about the work. So this is me. I hope you found one or two things that are interesting. I also wrote a book about the topic, about the drama of game development, which dives also a bit deeper into all what I'm telling here. It's a bit like, I wrote it like twofold, story-wise, and then theory. So I have a team, and they are working on stuff, and then things go wrong, and I go out and like in this theory mode and explain what the hell just happened. So that was me. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Great stuff. We do have time for Q&A, so guys.
I think there's 3 minutes here left.
Yeah, but there is lunch afterwards and no one needs to eat, so.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering if you have any advice for teams who want to transition from a pace-setting leadership type to a coaching type.
If I have tips for transitioning, I think the most advantage is that realizing that you have a pace-setting leadership style. I think there's a lot of good books and YouTube videos about like how to do a good coaching leadership style. I think what is most important is that the stakeholders in the company are aware of this and are also supporting this, because this is always like where it stops. Like the stakeholders, the ones who run the company, they're like how they think about stuff is important. And if they like, I don't know, if they say something but they truly believe something else, it's also not going to work. So I think this is probably the best tip I would have. Like, talk to the stakeholders, like the ones at the top of the company, and then figure out where they are at with this and what they think makes sense. If that helps.
I think we can agree on a thing that the team is very multidimensional and extremely complex thing, right? So it cannot be observed in a glance, right? Do you have in mind some real world thing that you can put in a parallel to the team? A team to be like, and then the analogy from the real world.
Not sure.
Very naive example here can be the team working very good as a gearbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that way, or something more sophisticated that you might have in mind to compare the team to in the real world.
Still not sure if I understand the question correctly, but like, I think if if you have a team that is used to a certain way of working, you also shouldn't break it on purpose. Because if it's already like, I mean, like this, for example, maybe what John Romero talked about, like how they worked in the 90s, they probably didn't work like a coaching style. So I think if they have like something that works already, that is already like a good team, then keep it, of course. But I'm not sure if that answered the question, like what you mean.
I'm asking the question because I'm a big fan of like comparing the team and find the parallels in the real world. And for me, it goes on the full scale from atomic connections to the universe functionality.
Okay.
For me,
maybe
for example,
we can follow up on the QA session then. Because that sounds interesting. That sounds interesting.
True. There will be Q&A afterwards there. So yeah, let's go with one more question, and then of course I will again abuse my position and ask you one question.
Hello, thank you for the great lecture. It's really good things about teams and so on. And I have a question about the lead position, because at the start you showed the diagram where there are lines from the intermediate and senior and principal to the lead. And after this, there were slides that tell that lead have to dig into the conflicts, and also lead have to assess other developers, their knowledges and so on. And doesn't it require a technical expertise? Could the intermediate guy or middle, for example, solve the conflict of two principal developers, like what engine should they use or something, or to assess can a person can be a principal or a senior, or he can be other lead or something? Doesn't it require the technical expertise?
Yes, very good question. Glad you asked, because yes, they do, of course. You cannot put like someone who has like no subject matter expertise as a leader of like a coding team. Like someone who has never coded in their life can't lead a coding team. That is, of course. So the only point I'm making is like you don't need to be the best coder in the team in order to lead it. But you need to have enough subject matter expertise to be able to like understand the specific challenges of the craft. That's absolutely yes, I would agree.
Return this again.
The question is about breaking the silos. We're talking about teams, but sometimes you have like teams working in different silos, and we have a beautiful word called collaboration. And we ask these teams to collaborate with each other. It's probably like a subject, the next subject. How can you break the silos? How can you, like making sure that the teams can collaborate and work together? Because you could have a great team, however, you need to operate like in a different reality. You need to operate with the other teams as well. Yes, true. I'm not saying it's easy, but I think where I would start is like with intent. Like, what are we trying to achieve? To make that clear to the people, and also this chain of rationale. Like, okay, what is our business reality? What do we need to achieve? What is the thing that we are doing, the project, because of this? So this is the project we are doing because of our business rationale. And then, okay, then this goes all the way down to like, what are we trying to achieve in this team? How does this feed back into the vision, pretty much? But then it's also important to understand like the day-to-day rituals, for example, and the work processes, and how you can organize that. One thing, for example, that I noticed often is that teams never do their retrospectives correctly. For example, huh? It's like, because what they tend to do is that you have a retrospective meeting, and then you have like 50 million issues on the table, and then you try to attack like 5, 6, 7 issues, and then the next retrospective, none of these are followed up, and none of these get fixed. So, for example, one thing that I would say is in the retrospective, how you should do them is like focus only on one thing. It's like do them more often, but only focus on one thing. Like, okay, this is one thing that we as a team can do right now to be faster. And then it's one thing, and then the next retro, you follow up on that one thing. Okay, did it work? Should we keep it or not? And then we take one other thing, and that's it. And this is how you like improve your work process over time, and gradually hand over like the work process more and more to the team. For example, so there's like so many things that you need to like understand and know about like how to work together. But yeah, I think vision is probably the first thing where I would start.
Yeah, one more. Sorry, I was actually lying with that one more. Rita, can you come a little bit closer here? Here we go. No, stop. Turn
Not
around.
that close.
Yeah, and now, you see? Well, I cannot be a leader, I guess, right?
Hi, thank you. I'm gonna make a quite similar question. How do you get in a team that it's some can be trouble-ish? How can I say it? The mood can be not right. They can be quite angry at each other. You grab this team and you say, okay, we need to reset the mood, the atmosphere. We need to get this done. How do we grab this team that is badly connected and get this done? We need to use these 5 people. They are not treating each other right, but need to reset the mood. We need to do this right. How do we do it?
Yeah, that is also a good question. It's like one company I started, the team had begun to like secretly record each other in like Zoom calls. So I was like, okay, we need to fix this. This is like not good. And I think what did help was like talking about the topic. Okay, how do we want to work together, people? We need to define this. We should like talk about expectations on leaders. What was the one program what we did, and we also should talk about like our value set, for example. Like how do we want to treat each other? Even if it sounds a bit cringy, but you actually have to just go through that process with this team, and then people will realize, okay, hey, they are serious about this. We actually want to have like a better culture and a better trust in the team. So make it a topic, talk about it, and then involve the people into the whole process of, okay, what kind of team do we actually want to be? Because then if people can influence like things, then their buy-in is also a lot better. Plus vision and what are we trying to achieve? Like I would always, this is one of the things that always should be part of this whole process.
Okay, thank you.
Guido, in mobile in general, it's very hard to make it about anything else than money.
I know.
So I'm curious, what is your goal at Rovio? You know, make the world nerdier.
At Rovio, we have like an interesting situation because now we want to revitalize Angry Birds. So yeah, it's been monetized quite hard, I think. But now the point is, okay, now we want to make it fun again. And that is something that people go like, yes, this is cool. This is what we want to do, and this is why we're here. And this is also why they brought me along.
Angry Birds great again?
Pretty much.
All right, this could be a good end of this.
I mean, this is maybe, like, I don't know if it's copyright infringement.
Yeah, okay. Again, thank you very much. Let's give another round of applause to Guido. It was awesome.